Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Well, today is such a gloomy day outside. You may not think it, but the sun is not out. So I figured today is the perfect day to talk about something a little bit more serious and what happened to us. So we've been in Portugal now for less than a year, and we have already had our fair share at the hospital. Nothing serious, so don't worry. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she was 3 at the time. Back in August, she started experiencing a pretty common thing that young kids go through, which are ear infections. So she would have a really high fever. Well, I guess it would be like 101, 102, maybe at most it was 103 degrees Fahrenheit. So it started in August, which if you have kids, you know this is a pretty common thing. So we went to the nearby pediatrician and they prescribed her some antibiotics. So then her fever subsided, and after a week she went to school. That would have been just fine, except the following week she then got another ear infection. And so the same scenario happened. We would go to the pediatrician, they'd prescribe her antibiotic, and we would have it filled at the pharmacy and she would be on it for a week. Then the same situation would continue to happen. So after having these many ear infections, we started getting concerned. Again, it wasn't uncommon for us to have to deal with ear infections when it comes to children, but you know, we would maybe come across like a handful of ear infections a year for our oldest son. My middle child never really got sick, so she didn't really have too many ear infections, but you know, my youngest one, it just seemed like she was getting at least 2 ear infections a month, which is a lot. So after having those many ear infections, we decided to go see a specialist, like an ENT. So this was probably at the end of October, early November, where we were getting concerned because she was on antibiotics quite frequently if you think about it. So we went to an ENT, which is located at CUF in Torres. So if you're not familiar with CUF, it's a private hospital. They have locations all around Portugal, but we decided to go to one in Torres because it's only about a 45-minute drive, maybe a half an hour if you are, if you have a heavy foot. Before we went there, we called in to make an appointment. They do have an English option, so you are able to call in to make an appointment using a representative who's fluent in English. So when you first walk into CUF, if you aren't familiar with it, it is a pretty big hospital. It's located in a big building. They do surgeries there and all that stuff. When you first walk in, are, I want to say like 5 kiosks. On top of that, you have, your typical receptionist or however way you want to call the front desk help. So when you first walk in, there's an attendant there by the kiosk, and you go in, you can either ask the attendant for help or you just go in and do it yourself, which is kind of what we did. They ask for your NIF number. So you put in your NIF, and then based upon that, you're able to then see the appointment that you have. For the first few times that we went, the kiosks asked us to prepay for the appointment, which we did. We just used our credit card to pay for it, and then they gave you a receipt, which was nice. Then the kiosk will issue you a ticket. And on that ticket, it'll tell you which floor to go to for your appointment. So for us, we went to that floor and we went into that room. And it was a waiting room full of other people who are waiting for their services. So we waited until our number was called, which you can see the numbers being called using there's like a TV screen, and then you can see the number and it'll tell you which room to go to. So unlike the States where like a nurse will come out to greet you or call your name, it doesn't really work that way. Once our number was called, we walked into the office, the exam room. It's not even an exam room. Well, I guess an exam room. Anyway, we walked into the office and was greeted with a doctor. So really there were no nurses to guide you to where to go. So we went to the ENT specialist there, and she was so delightful. She's fluent in English, and my daughter, who had seen numerous doctors at that point, was, always apprehensive. Any young kids are going to be apprehensive with a new doctor, a new face, and all that stuff. But she warmed up really quickly to the doctor. The doctor also has a kid around her age, so it really helped because the doctor was familiar with how kids are. So I told her what had been going on, with all of her doctor exams, all of her ear infections, all of her fevers. So the doctor then performed a routine ear checking her ears and her throat and everything, and then said that she had a lot of fluid in her ears, which was causing the ear infection. So because she had so much fluid in her ears, it was really hard to prevent another ear infection from coming because all the fluid wasn't draining properly. So she gave us some more antibiotics, pretty much the same thing that we've been getting, and told us to give a call back if it wasn't going away. That had been going on. 2 weeks later, sure enough, she had another ear infection. At this point, it was like November, December, and we went in for another appointment. So the same scenario, she's like, well, her ears aren't draining, but let's give her some more antibiotics. So that happened. It was the holidays. I don't think she had an ear infection then. And then January came. And so same scenario. At this point, we bypassed going to pediatricians and we just stuck with the ENT specialist because obviously she knows what she's doing. So same scenario, not draining, another ear infection, another high fever, gave her prescriptions. And at this point, the doctor then gave me her cell phone number, her personal cell phone number, which in the States, it's pretty uncommon that your doctor is going to give you their cell phone number. And then told me to call whenever I needed. If I had any questions, concerns, another situation happened with her ears, just give her a call. Because at that point, we had already probably visited her 2 or 3 times. And she was just telling us, there's no point in you coming in paying the copay to come see me. Just give me a call. I already know what's going on. So that was really nice. So at the end of January, same scenario. She was having the same problems. So at this point, I just gave her a call and then she would then send me a prescription through a text message, which was super convenient because I got the text message and I asked her, I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? I'm not familiar with this. And so she told me, just show the pharmacist the text message and they'll be able to fill your prescription using that. I'm like, wow, this is great. February came, we actually went back to the States and we had brought her prescriptions with us. And I think at one point I had maybe missed a day or something. So I called her, it was like on the weekend. And I'm like, okay, is this a problem? And she was like, no. The great thing about this scenario, and I'm not going to say that all doctors will give you their cell phone numbers, but it was nice because it was the weekend. I didn't really expect her to call me because I just sent her a text message thinking that she'll give me a call whenever is convenient for her. And so she called me pretty much within a 5-10 minute time frame from when I sent the text message. And I had missed her call because I was not expecting her to call me. And so she actually called me back again, like maybe 30 minutes later. And I'm like, wow, she's really on top of it. So I do recommend her. Anyway, so we came back from the States. It was probably at the end of February at this point. She had another ear infection, not a shocker. And so at that point, the doctor was getting more concerned that her ears were not draining, and at the past few months that she's seen her, that it has never really drained. So she decided that it was best to look into a surgery option. And she had told me beforehand she doesn't really like to perform surgeries on younger ages unless it's warranted. And so I was really thankful to hear that. So she had told me, let's perform some tests before we for sure agree upon the surgery, just like a hearing test, as well as some blood work and x-rays. And all those testings were actually done at CUF, which is nice. So the hearing test was super simple. She had headphones on, which they decorated, which was cute. And then they, played with toys just to monitor how her hearing was. And prior to that, we already knew that she was having issues hearing us because there were plenty of times where she would say, I don't hear what you're saying, or I don't understand what you're saying, or I didn't hear you. Or like we would be sitting next to her and we would say something to her and she would just ignore us, which was very concerning. But at the same time, she's also a kid, and when she's playing, I don't think, to me, it's not uncommon for kids to totally ignore you if they're playing. So anyway, so the test came back. It was in a sealed envelope, and plus I wouldn't have been able to read the testing anyway. So we waited until the next appointment with the doctor to review the testing. So before she reviewed the results, she looked at the ears. It was still clogged with fluid. And so she knew that the testing results probably were not going to be good. So she looked at it and she confirmed that the test results were below normal. And she was actually surprised that she tested as well as she did because she was really blocked up with fluid. And she gave me an example, which I can understand. She was like, imagine when you're underwater, swimming underwater, and someone tries talking to you. That's how your daughter is hearing things right now. It's just very muffled. So she doesn't really hear really well. and she isn't able to enunciate her words because she can't hear herself, which then I understood what was going on. So at that point, she then highly recommended that we looked into surgery, where she would shave down her adenoids and then put tubes into her ears. She recommended because if we decided to wait, which some parents do, they decide to wait like a year for the children to kind of outgrow that situation. However, she told me for my daughter's situation, since she's had so many ear infections and it hasn't improved, that surgery is the best option to go down right now. Otherwise, if we waited another year, the chances of her having potentially temporary to permanent hearing loss was highly likely. So we didn't want that to happen. So we decided, the surgery is performed so many times in the States, I'm pretty sure that it's a really safe surgery to get. And she had told me that she's performed it many times before too. So it wasn't like it was, a rare surgery to have your child undergo. So we decided to go ahead and perform the surgery. And our surgery date was in April. So before the surgery, you have to do a lot of testing. So like blood work tests, we had to do a COVID test. I want to say there was another test that we had to do, but I can't recall right now. All the tests we had to do in CUF. So it was nice because after each appointment, we walked down, we grabbed a ticket, and we made the appointment at with the receptionist or the front desk. You don't really do it with the kiosk, that's more for the checking in sections, but all the receptionists or front desk people that you want to call it were able to make the appointment. Or you can call in too if you feel comfortable. So we made all the appointments, we had all that done, and then the day of the surgery. So before the surgery day, we did receive a couple of emails and phone calls just to guide us through what to expect for the surgery and if I had any questions, as well as how much the surgery was going to cost and all that stuff. So we received an email giving us instructions what to do on the day of the surgery, which was to arrive at the hospital by 7:30 a.m. And then you will have to pay a 50% balance of the surgery. So we arrived, I think we arrived like 7 o'clock or 7:15 in the morning, really early, because back in the States, when they tell you to arrive at 7:30, I don't know about you, but I usually like to arrive a little bit earlier than when they recommend for you to arrive, because who knows? We arrived and nobody was there. We waited. I'm like, okay, well maybe 7:30. Obviously we're in Portugal, so maybe when they tell you 7:30, to really arrive at 7:30. So sure enough, don't arrive early because they won't open the doors. So actually at 7:30, the doors opened, but there was actually no employees there except for the security guard. So we told the security guard that she had surgery and that we were here to check in. So he actually escorted us up to the floor where the surgery is being taken place. And before we were able to go back to the patient area and the hospital rooms and all that stuff, we had to pay the balance. Then once we paid the balance, we waited outside outside in the lobby area for a nurse or someone, an attendant, to come get us. So we waited maybe at most like 15 minutes, and a nurse came by to greet us. So she escorted my husband and I back into the patient room, like her own room, and then told us that only one parent was allowed to stay with her at all times. And I think it was mainly because of COVID, because she did talk about the maximum amount of people in the room that's allowed. So I decided to stay with my daughter, and we waited. So she got undressed and changed into her hospital gown, and we just waited watching TV. Now the room is set up for another patient as well. So in our situation, we didn't have another patient join the room, so it wasn't, even though it's a shared room, it was just us there, and there is a full bathroom and a TV to watch, which was nice. So after probably maybe 45 minutes, the anesthesiologist came by to then greet my daughter as well as myself and kind of tell us how everything's going to happen. So that was really nice because, my daughter, who was expecting a regular ear exam from her doctor, is now going through surgery, and she's unprepared mentally to have surgery done. So it was nice that all the doctors and the nurses were extremely nice and helpful, and obviously guided my daughter when she was having, when she was scared. They were able to calm her down. Now, if you're wondering, as far as English being spoken, the doctors were able to speak English. Half of the nurses were able to speak English while the other half didn't. But I was able to communicate enough using my small amount of Portuguese vocabulary to understand what was going on. And then if I didn't understand something, they were able to grab one of the nurses who spoke English to help translate, which was helpful. So after that, before the surgery, way before the surgery, probably like an hour before the surgery, the anesthesiologist gave my daughter some calming liquid. It's some sort of liquid to calm her down in a form of a drink. So my daughter drank it, and it really relaxed her, which was really nice. And then after about a half an hour of waiting some more, they took her back for the surgery. So I was able to walk with her as they rolled her into the surgery room. And at this point, my daughter was out of it. She was laughing, she was talking about unicorns. It was really funny to see. She started taking off her surgery gown, and it was hilarious. I now have some stuff to use against her. So we were in the surgery room and I was able to walk back with her. And luckily she was really calm and she was able to relax a little bit. So then at that point I was able to leave the room and go back to the waiting room. I want to say the surgery only took about maybe 30-45 minutes. It was definitely under an hour. And the nurse came back to tell me that everything went well and that she was in post-op right now. And they were going to monitor her for another half an hour to an hour. So I then went back to the post-op room to be with her, and she was sleeping. So I was just kind of waiting, and the post-op room is kind of like this big shared room with the attendants there, the nurses. So I waited for her to sleep some more, and I want to say they tried to wake her up after maybe 45 minutes because they really wanted her to drink some fluids before going back to her patient room. And they gave me ice cream. They gave those Calipos, so it's kind of like the ices. Or I guess I should say popsicles. It was like a popsicle. And they gave her some fruit juices, some water, anything so that she would be able to drink it. And she was so groggy out of it. She was barely drinking anything. So then the nurse was like, okay, just wait another half an hour, just let her sleep some more. And so I did. And at that time, the doctor actually came back and told me that everything went well, the surgery went well, that they were able to drain the fluids out, so everything is, going well. She also told me what the instructions were for her home care and to give her a call if there were any problems or concerns. At that point, and that was actually the first time I saw the doctor, which was nice because I was like, I haven't seen the doctor, and I don't know if that's normal in the States, but I hadn't seen the doctor, but I was really reassured when she came by. So at that point, she was able to wake up and start drinking some fluids. And we were able to go back to the patient room where she kind of fell back asleep some more. And so the nurses were telling us, go ahead and just, relax, stay here as long as you need. We'll give her a couple more hours to kind of let the sedatives wear off. And when you're ready, you can leave. So I think we waited another hour or two. And then she was awake to, drink enough fluids. And they wouldn't let us leave until she drank at least half of a container of one of those bongo juices, like the fruit juices, or if she had at least eaten half of a popsicle, just so that they know that she's getting fluid inside of her. So after all that, we were able to be discharged from the hospital. And when we went home, she kind of just took it easy. And so we were super grateful that everything went well. And then after, I want to say like a week, we received a text message for the remainder of the bill, which we paid using bank transfer. And then I think like a couple days after that, we received the bill, like the paid bill with the receipt in the mail, which then you would submit to your insurance company for reimbursement. So we had a post-op appointment, I want to say 2 weeks after the surgery, and the doctor said that everything looked good, that there were no more fluids being built up in her ears, and everything looked great. And I will say now that it's mid-June, so a couple months after the surgery has been done, she has not had any more ear infections, and I have seen a noticeable difference in the way she speaks. She has yet to tell us that she can't hear us, and it seems like everything went well at the end. So right now she still has the tubes in her ears, so she can't really go in the pool. I mean, she still does, but only from the waist down. She'll be in the water, but she'll have the tubes in her ears for at least another 9 months, I want to say 9 months to a year. We still have to go back to the doctors to have a checkup every couple of months just to make sure everything is going well. And overall though, I am so happy and pleased with how our first surgery went here in Portugal and how the doctors have been so kind. And honestly, there's nothing that I can complain about with the surgery and the medical care here. And in case you are wondering, you could have gone, or like I could have gone down the public route, because at this point we had a numero de utente and we could have waited to see a public doctor. However, after dealing with CUF, I don't know if I will use the public service here, public healthcare, just because I know there is a longer wait time. And overall, I've just been really happy with CUF Hospital in general. I just wish it was closer, but word on the street is that CUF is coming here in Caldish, so I'm gonna be super happy because I won't have to drive, half an hour, 45 minutes and pay, I think we paid maybe €4 in toll. So I will be super happy when and if CUF comes to Caldish, because it'll be a really quick drive at that point. And then at that point, I don't think we'll ever really use the public health care. I love CUF, and I highly, highly recommend CUF if you need to have surgery or if you need to see a specialist or even go for a regular doctor appointment. They do cater towards an array of services. So definitely check their website out. But overall, I can't believe I had surgery, or I can't believe my daughter had surgery in Portugal, and I am so happy that it all went well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys found this to be helpful. Oh, in case you're wondering, the amount that we paid for the surgery itself, including, everything related to the hospital, the anesthesiologist, the surgery itself, was about €3,500. I'll try linking what the dollar conversion would be. So I don't know if that is the going rate in the States. I don't know if that's really expensive. Since my kids have never had it before, I don't know what I should have expected. But since insurance, that's before insurance. So insurance in my situation covered it 100%. So overall, I think it was a really good price, because I know back in the States, I would have had to pay a deductible before the insurance would have kicked in. So I'm pretty sure we would have had at least to pay $1,200 out of pocket, whereas here we didn't have to. So take it as it is. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys found this to be helpful. And if so, please hit the like button on this video, and I will see you in the next one. All right, ciao.